Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for part 2 of the estimating training for construction. This is Victoria Beal with the LTAP Center, and we are partnering with Micah Flanagan in the Supportive Services section of the Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Ohio Department of Transportation to be able to provide you this training virtually during this stay-at-home shelter-in-place time. So a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll move right into the presentation. We have 2 handouts for you again in the handout panel this morning, and I will also follow up with those documents in an email after the webinar has completed today. We ask that if you have any questions for the presenter, please put those in the question panel section of the GoToWebinar control box on your screen, and they'll be read off to the presenter for a response. And I know that he intends to also provide us a comprehensive question and answer document after the webinar has completed that we'll be able to provide out to you. Last but not least, we are attempting to record the webinar, and if it's successful, we'll post that recording and send you a link to it. But if it's not successful, you are here live being able to get the information, and that's what's most important. So we appreciate your attendance this morning, and I want to introduce Joe Lopez. He's going to be your instructor this morning, and he'll give you a little bit of background about himself for those who might not have been with us yesterday, and then launch right into our presentation. Joe, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Joe Lopez. I'm with Artesa Building Group. I've been a contractor for the last 32 years. So I've seen all different facets of construction, mostly vertical construction, but the vertical and also the civil improvements are similar. Some of the principles that we'll talk about today are general principles. They're not specific for any industry, but we'll try to tour the construction industry that is most applicable for ODOT and its affiliates. So again, thank you so much. For those that were with us yesterday, we had some great questions. I encourage you to write questions in so that we'll try to address them as we go through the program. There's a lot of content today, tremendous amount of content. We'll try to get it into 1 hour. If we don't, there is an email at the very end of the PowerPoint. You could address those questions to me in an email, and I'll respond to them. So that's part of it. Again, I wanted to thank everybody, and let's get into part 2. However, I would like for you guys to have your attachments opened or ready to go beforehand. So when we go through them, you could keep up, and if not, you could address them afterwards. So we'll go to the first slide, which is our estimating construction part 2. This is truly the day in the life of an estimator. I felt that this was important because I wanted you to share this with your project management team, your owners, and others, how important the estimator is in the survival of all construction companies. We all have experienced this. Sometimes we go in and we're not prepared. We've had a bad day or a bad evening beforehand, and we're going in there and trying to do our estimating. Sometimes we're not focused. We don't have the bid bond in hand. We're relying on someone else, whether it's associate or the bonding or insurance company, to provide that, and we don't have it, and we're panicking at the last minute. So a lot of what we'll talk about is preparation and rehearsal prior to bid date. Now, sometimes the team members that you're counting on don't show up. They're not focused. We've heard all the excuses. They are excuses, and it should not be tolerated when you put your company at risk. The guesstimating, for multitude of weak excuses. Again, you can't accept it, especially when those people that are guesstimating are putting you at risk and putting your money and your assets and typically your bond at risk. Again, if they're not committed and it's not the culture of the company, I believe that, and I encourage you to remove those because it's so critical in the success of your company. You relied on bids, you've relied on subs to prepare their bids on time. And most of the time, it's our fault that we did not instruct them, we didn't hold them accountable, and the accountability of a subcontractor that's being loyal to the prime is so important. You got to remember that subcontractors are like everybody else. They're busy, they get distracted on one thing or another. So having that open dialogue with the subcontractors, suppliers is so important. You know, one thing that we've experienced in our career, again, after the 32 years of doing this, is that special items, the price is not released early. They usually wait to the 11th hour. So that's very difficult and challenging, but you need to encourage and to collaborate with those special requests. So you know everything you can, maybe everything but the pricing, but you know it intimately. And if you had to, and I hate to say that, I don't encourage people to guesstimate, but you have to have a feeling for what it's worth. Special items are a challenge in every industry because unless you've had experience, you're going to guesstimate. That's why what we talked about yesterday was ATF after the fact. Do you use those files? You know, do you have some sense of where it can be? That's really important. You know, the other part about it we talked about is that too many bids come at all at one time because they understand that the bids are due. They'll send them too late, and sometimes they're incomplete. So having that open dialogue communication is a key. You know, here's part of it also. When you get your RFP or you get your opportunity, you know, is the bid form too difficult? Way too many alternates, no cooperation, and are you over your head? This happens and we have to be prepared for it. As I said yesterday, if you don't have a backup plan, you don't have your first plan. You really you have to consider, you know, are you going to move ahead? Are you going to put everything at risk? Or are you just going to pass on it? You know, you can't have those excuses that your subordinate didn't show up when you need them the most for one reason or another. So what I like to do is have, Victoria, if you could do poll number 1. And poll number 1 is that have you experienced a bid form confusing, too many alternates and too many breakouts? If those on the webinar can respond to that, it'd be great. It'll give us an opportunity to share the responses. All right, let's just continue. Victoria will give us the results. Here's a typical day.
Sure. Let me go ahead and give you the results. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
We've got 79% that said yes and 21% that said no. All right, it's hidden again. There you go.
Yeah, the 21% are probably those that are a little more seasoned and understand that those bid forms can be confusing. And we've all experienced this. So what we'd like to do is review those in advance, share with the rest of our team, and really focus on that and not let it fall through the cracks. But we're talking about a day in the life of an estimator. Here's a great culture and the characteristics of an estimator. They bid every job aggressively. They truly do. I mean, I don't know how some of these estimators are juggling 3 or 4 jobs at the same time because they may be in the same silo of work, but they're very different. They could be different in size and magnitude and complexity. They always believe that they can win each one. They go for the kill. They love the feeling of winning. I mean, most estimators are very cerebral or they're very aggressive in their character. The cerebral side of it is that they want to win at a different magnitude than someone that's going to execute. Okay, they're always looking for new products to bid. The sign of a good estimator is someone that always has work in the pipeline. They study each project thoroughly, so they understand it. They do read the specs and know all of the specs. Now we'll talk about this a little bit later on as far as the CSI, okay? And that's all the specifications. They do study the geotechnical reports. That is mostly for civil work. Obviously, if you're a supplier, you don't need to know that unless it's in your scope of work that you're supplying product for that division. They study the general conditions for special and unusual conditions. I would tell you that a lot of managers skim over the general conditions. They figure someone else is going to do it. Someone's going to read it and they're going to hold them accountable. I'd say if you're a good estimator, you need to know the general conditions because you should be sharing that with the rest of your team members. You'd be sharing that with the owners, your CFO, project management team, like, hey, we really need to consider, are we going to pass are we going to bid this project? You look for special conditions as far as the schedule. You know, in most schedules, there's predecessors and successors. The predecessors you have to follow once another task is completed. So knowing where you lined up in the schedule, how you're impacted. Now, certain trades are pushed out to the very end. The first is if it's a civil work and there's landscaping and benches and that kind of stuff like that, you're at the very end, okay? So that means that if there's delay in a project, you get pushed out. And that's something that you should consider on the schedule itself as far as timing. So it also impacts other work that you may have. Check for tax considerations. Make sure that you get those tax exempt forms early, as soon as you can, and make sure that you share it and you have a file so you share that with all the suppliers and anyone else. It's your right, if it's a tax exempt, to take them up on those opportunities and considerations. Again, looking early for those unusual items. They're hard to price, or something that you're totally unfamiliar with. Study addendums and make the notes on the plans and changes. We talk about this on a regular basis. The addendums come out prior to bid date, and sometimes they're very complex. The addendums, sometimes they're very simple, sometimes there's no addendums, and you need to acknowledge that at your submission. So just be aware of that. Visit the site if you can, photograph it as required. This is mostly for site construction or something that's already in place. And you should have those photographs part of the project folder and file from the very beginning, as we talked about, to the closeout. Have those photographs, and if you have them, update them. Same location, same time, same angles, and date them. We're talking about, you know, building the project in mind. There are many times when you walk in and see an estimator just flipping through the drawings and just trying to get a feel of the magnitude, the complexity, where it's at. Again, you have to make those decisions prior to getting into specification and details. So it's a collective group of information that allows you to decide. Now, we will talk about, you know, again, I asked for more questions so that we can be more specific for your particular silo of opportunity. Here again, develop a list of questions for the architect, the subcontractors, suppliers. You need to have that open dialogue. Suppliers need to know when you need it, how you want it delivered, price-wise, etc. The subcontractors also, you know, interview them, have a comfort level that they could comply what you need to do upstream, and also have those questions ready for the architect. Most of the time they go through the architect or to the owner's representative. Sometimes you could ask those questions direct to the architect. Sometimes it has to go to the project management team of the owner. Discuss the project with in-house field staff. This is to know or to have a feeling for, can you take another project on? Does it conflict with all your assets? And your assets would be your equipment, your manpower, your cash, as we discussed yesterday. Develop a list of value engineering ideas. I will tell you what someone that we all know and recognize is Albert Einstein. He said, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. If you think about, he's a very smart guy, obviously, we all respect him, but it's true. A to B is pretty simple. It's the imagination that will win you the job. So those value engineering ideas is so important. Prepare a thorough review of the project with the management. Once again, it's a team effort because the team wins or the team loses. I want you to promote each project, and this is through solicitations, obviously through email, through any type of solicitation that you can, informing them to make sure downstream subcontractors, suppliers have it on their bid list. So promote the jobs. And what you'll find out is that sometimes the subcontractors, suppliers will call you and say, were you aware of this opportunity? So once again, talk about it, be recognized as a subject matter expert, and the communication is so much easier. talk with the subs, seek out new subcontractors. There's a lot of opportunities for networking, whether you're an edge, an MBE, a DBE, a female business enterprise, a new company, etc. like that. You need to promote yourself, as well as the primes need to look for those opportunities for the subcontractors. Again, we talk about talking to management. Again, these are repetitive ideas and concepts that the estimators live by. Seek advice of superintendents and project managers. Once again, you heard this before, you're going to hear it again and again and again. Those project managers and the superintendents in the field have boots in the field, have boots on the ground, where a lot of times the estimator and the owner may not be in the field as much, and they have a concept, but sometimes it's blurry and it's not a reality of what they need to be aware of. Make sure we're all listed in all publications, list bulletins, etc. That's what we're talking about. If it's a public bid and there's a bulletin, you want to be registered as one of those that are participating in chasing the project, because you never know who that subcontractor or the supplier is that has an opportunity and did not know that you're bidding a job, and here there is an opening as the bidder. You didn't know that someone else has been in the job as a supplier. So please promote yourself. Let others know that you're going after the project. Keep an ear to the ground of those people that have interest in the project. Once again, there are always fragmentations and second generations or people that worked for a company and they want to go on their own. And there's an opportunity for them. They know you, but you need to, again, find out, did they break away? Are they good? Do they have the skill sets? Can they make a contribution to your project? One of the things we talk about on a regular basis is the professional estimators. Now, the professional estimators, and if we could put this poll up also, Victoria.
Working on it.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to continue because there are a lot of content.
Okay, it's up there.
This is just one of the professional estimator organizations.
You're getting quite a few votes, and it's pretty heavily slanted towards the no end. So are you ready for me to take the poll down?
Yep.
Okay. Sharing your results. It's 12% yes, 88% no. I've hidden the poll again.
So for those that are aware and I see the benefits, try to engage yourself with an organization. Yesterday we talked about having some of those professional estimators comply with the request, and you could invite them to help you. You could, obviously you could sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement per project. So if they're helping you, they're not helping your competitor. So NDAs are really important if you do an outsource of an estimator. Don't take it for granted that professional estimator is going to work. It's a freelancer, 1099. They're going to work for you. They're going to work for someone else. Obviously, if they work on the same project for two different entities, could be a conflict. So we're talking about professional estimators. Here's what we want to talk about. It's about do the math, know the math. I mean, obviously, know that they're asking for square footage, cubic yards, linear footage. Once we go into the ODOT specifications towards the end of this program, you understand why I want you to know your math. Take all the math, take all the takeoffs accurately. Take off as many as practical, site, concrete, masonry, all that you know and understand, obviously. And it's for volume so that you understand the project and those downstream or your suppliers are on the same page, okay? Check your estimate against normal costs or sub costs, quantity and cost. This is where if you do your preliminary quantities and you're going downstream that they know. I will tell you yesterday we talked about, I put a bid together. I found out yesterday through a supplier that they said, oh my God, Joe, you bid this project and the other guy didn't even have the same quantities. Well, we went back and did our research and we found out that we were right and the other contractor didn't have the full scope. The subcontractor shared it with us, and we said, great, they're going to be lower than us. However, they will not be not fulfill the understanding of the contract or the opportunity. Therefore, we are the right price, and we knew that. But again, subcontractor shared it with us, and we had a little insight, that our estimating was accurate. Make sure estimate is up accurately, check against specs, and then index it. We'll go into this a little bit differently later. The setup is to make sure that your specs, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, there's enough specs out there that you can tag cost for every specification. Do your takeoffs and complete it well before bid date. Again, we're talking about at the last minute. It seems like a lot of subcontractor suppliers are fulfilling the invitation at the last minute. So you need to know it in advance. Again, we talked about having overall costs on the bid date, prior to bid date, and that's where the estimator has a feeling by reading the drawings, understanding the specs, understanding the addendums, and all of the dialogue that comes from that. This is so important. I could tell you that some estimators are very well organized and they're very cerebral. Others are like winging it. They're in a hurry, they're panicking, they're doing multiple things, so they're not organized. And I would tell you, on the bid date, you need to be very organized, focused. Have a division of work allocated ahead of time. When we're talking about this, we're saying, is someone doing hardscape, someone doing civil? Do they know it? Some of these projects are so complex that you do need a team, and you need to have that responsibility allocated to those that are part of the team. Have scope sheet organized. Once again, we talk about some of these bid invitations and the responses are by areas. They're subdivided so many times that you make sure that you're not double dipping as far as the cost goes. And you have to make arrangements for extra support. We talk about extra support. We talked about it yesterday. Sometimes you have to go into the bid room, the war room, and there's people bringing in bids. There's sometimes someone's reviewing the scopes, and if it's non-complete, don't even consider it. Put it into the non-bidding supplier. Have all your alternatives and unit pricing estimated and filled in. A lot of times you already know the quantities, so you can put the quantities in. Pricing sometimes does not come till a bit later on, and that's when you could extend it by using your software. Have the bond ready and signed. You could get thrown out, have the best price, but on technicality, not have the bond signed. On a technicality, you're found non-responsive. Have your proposal form filled out in advance. There's a lot on those bid proposals that can be generated early. Sometimes it's all your profile of the company, who's going to be on the subcontractors, sometimes to be determined. Sometimes they want to know your MBE, your DBE, your edge, all those items there. You have to know what the goals are and try to achieve those goals. Here's really something that's important that people don't take this seriously. Have the person turn in the bid thoroughly briefed. Many times, you need to have your bid sealed, ready to go, dated. There should have potentially, or I would recommend, a driver and someone who's delivering the package. And the person delivering the package should know exactly what floor, what office, and what time to be there. And the driver is dropping them off and making it happen. In the past, when we're a younger firm, we've experienced that the bidder, the estimator, was doing all the proposals, writing, and dropping it off. Bad idea. As soon as you miss one bid date because you couldn't find a place to park or one thing or another, you'll understand that you should have two people and you should actually rehearse where they're going. Part 6 of the life of an estimator, putting it all together. We talked about this also before. To qualify the subs thoroughly. If they don't have it, you can either try to qualify them, call them on the phone. Maybe it's just an oversight, or maybe they left it out intentionally. Prepare the qualifications downstream as well as upstream, and then enter the numbers accurately. If you enter the numbers accurately using software, I think you're pretty comfortable. As long as you don't modify any of the software formulas, you should be okay. Submit the bid on time, that means early. How many times have we been to bid submissions and you see 3 or 4 other firms waiting in a hallway to the very last minute? I say if you're comfortable, you're complete, and your bid is responsive, deposit and move on. Review each project after the bid and proposal is complete. Sometimes you'll get new numbers at the very end. You should consider those, but put them as a part of your project file, but that you didn't utilize them. You could go through the exercise of saying, if we utilize this bid or the supplier, how does it impact your margins? Review your failures. A lot of times, we talked about yesterday, you're at a bid opening and someone else was very close or much lower. You got to review, like, what did we make a mistake? Did they make a mistake? As well as review your wins. The wins are just as important to figure out why did we win versus someone else? Did we make a mistake, or are we just better at what we've done? Prepare the bid book for the project manager. We talked about this also yesterday, is that the estimator truly is the liaison between the opportunities and the success of the companies. However, you need to share that information with the project management team if you're successful in detail. Who the suppliers were, who the subcontractors were, how it impacts your overall schedule, how it impacts the equipment and all your assets, as well as cash. Be careful about making commitments. You know, we don't talk about this too often, but you do want to thank those subcontractor suppliers that you utilize in your proposal, but you don't want to commit, because you really need to do a deeper dive prior to award to those subs to make sure that they really have everything, truly a deeper dive. Then you can make your award and recognize the success for their participation. We need you to develop your relations with the subs and suppliers, even if you don't use them. I would tell you that we used to write, and others still do this, handwritten thank you for their consideration and for their participation in the contract or trying to win the project. That personal touch goes a long way, and vice versa. If you're putting bids in and you're not even getting recognized by the contractor upstream that you put time and effort into it, I would make that call and say, hey, listen, did you get a bid? And was there something right? Was there something wrong with it? Did you like it? Do you know who we are? And that is a great opportunity to continue that relationship downstream as well as upstream. Want to go over the Victoria, if you can put question number 3.
Got it ready to go.
This
is a two-parter, I believe. The first one is, do you see any benefits? Correct? Oh, you know what? I think I launched the wrong one. Sorry, guys. Well, they're still voting on it.
That's fine.
I should, okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close this one up and put the first part of it up. They said 81% saw benefits, 19% said maybe. But now we'll ask them what the first part of it is. Do you use a detailed bid tabulation form? So that's what you were actually answering about. Did you see benefits too? Mm-hmm. So they're voting.
Ready for this one.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close it. We've got enough votes now. And I'm sharing the results. 64% said yes, and 36% said no.
Okay. I want to go backwards a little bit, and we're not going to go into the details of the American Society of Professional Estimators, but there is a code of ethics. And if you look at your attachments, I'm not going to go through all of them. There are 9 different canons of ethics that I hope that you guys could read in detail. And I'll answer any questions you may have on these 9 canons of ethics on an estimator, what they have to live by, and what they should consider as part of their culture of the character of a great estimator. So we're going to go to the MasterFormat division. This is really important because the CSIs division, at one time there were only 16. There's 50 right now, 50 that are being used, 50 that are assigned. They're all not being used. And the reason that all not being used, because as this industry changes and becomes more complex, and the more specialty subcontractors and engineers that are out there. I mean, when you talk about electrical engineers, I mean, there's probably 12 different electrical engineers, from low voltage to security, to power distribution, et cetera, et cetera. So the more specific we become, the more sophisticated, the more CSI divisions. So what we have here, as your screen will indicate, there's first page is 10 different divisions, but you'll also notice that there is a estimating program, a copy of a program to the left. And if you follow a detailed CSI format like this, which is part of your estimating program, the chances of missing something are slim to none. But you have to go through it, and it's very timely. So what I suggest is to have software like this. If it's irrelevant to you on this particular project, highlight it out, or vice versa, highlight it in, so that you can toggle between your proposals, your subcontractors, and actually the submission that you need to supply upstream to the owner.
We have a couple questions that came into the question pod. The first
Perfect.
one is, does the estimator have an obligation to disclose that they are also representing your competition in the same bid? And then there's a second one too.
Can you say that again? I'm trying to process what they're asking here.
They're asking if the estimator has to tell you that they're also representing your competition in the same bid.
Oh, okay. You're talking about a professional outside estimator. That's what we talked about, the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement. If they're not willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement, then I would probably pass on using them, because they can. It depends on their discipline, because what they're doing is that they have access to your pertinent information that's personal. That is the combination of formula for your company's success, and you're trusting them with that information, that they don't share it with your competitor. I think that's bad business. I think that's a poor decision. So I would say, should they disclose it? Yes, but if you haven't signed an NDA and you find out that they shared your information with the competitor and the competitor won, I'm not the lawyer. You hear about the lawyer answer to that, which is Pat Espinoza, who's coming in another division, another part of the series. That's a great question for Pat Espinoza.
The second part of it was, is that a question that they should ask the estimator up front when they're hiring them, if they're also representing competition in the same bid?
Absolutely. I would say that you need to qualify the third-party estimating entity, whether it's a company or an individual. Yes, you need to qualify them, and you have to hold them accountable for the confidentiality that you're sharing with them. Absolutely. If they're reluctant to say, well, I don't know, I might do this and that, I think that that's just bad business. I think it's bad judgment on your part to say, well, I'm taking a chance or a flyer. Being in construction is risky enough. Why would you use the odds against you? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but again, I'm not the lawyer.
That's all the questions for right now.
Thank you, Victoria. So as we continue, you'll see that this is division 11 to 34. And on the right-hand side, we talk about the CSI, the Construction Specification Institute. Now, the Construction Specification Institute does have chapters, and they have classes and seminars. And a lot of times what you'll see in those CSI formats is that suppliers are talking, some suppliers can talk about their offerings to the audience. So it is really a great opportunity to network, to learn from the suppliers, sometimes other subcontractors, et cetera. Great opportunity to learn more about the construction. There's more, again, there's 48 divisions here where we had 16, and you notice that they're between 35 and 40 on this division here. Those are reserved for other new divisions that are going to be generated as this entity gets filled out. This group from CSI, between the engineers and owners and subcontractors, the more specific they are, the more you can isolate them. There's more information here at the CSI at csinet.org. And then also, there also is another website here, www.arctoolbox.com. Again, we'll continue to make suggestions or to give you some direction how to look for more information for the estimators. And those that may not be estimators, but need to have an overall global understanding what the estimating team does. We're going to go real quick through what the ODOT website looks like. And if you understand what the ODOT website looks like, it is a very, very powerful website. Hope you have a lot of time to review this. Hope you have a lot of coffee, because it is so powerful. What I mean by that is like the opportunities, the history, all the conditions that you need to meet. Going downstream is like who won the job, et cetera, et cetera. So here's a website. We're not going to go through all of it because it'll take us hours to go through how robust it is. Here's some of the other website contributions. You could identify opportunities by district. You got 12 districts. So you could log on to any one of those districts and find out everything that you need to know about opportunities, what they're doing, where they're going, in the direction of ODOT. Again, more information for the council, the management, the contract sales, engineering, facilities, as well as for a lot of our subcontractors that are smaller, understanding and being familiar with all of what you bring to the table, your contributions. Again, if you're a DBE or Edge or female or small or local, and what you'll do is you'll be able to use those opportunities to find out who's bid in the job. Again, it's about relationships, it's about skill sets. More about contracts and contacts. Here you have DBEs, submit a pre-bid question. And then part of it is that even if you're not ready to bid on some of these bigger projects, understand why you're not ready. Don't be surprised. Just say, you know what, I know that I'm not ready, but I still want to introduce myself, understand where the landmines are at, and try to avoid those. Learn from other people's mistakes. Louis is going to go into slide 1. No, there we go. I just took this off of the ODOT website, and this talks about a little bit about, and this is all public, so I want you guys to get on there and understand it. Talks about $2 billion in 1 year. As I share with others, if I was a new entity growing into the construction world, certainly would consider infrastructure and civil work. $2 billion, that is year in and year out, and probably going to grow, I would think, as our infrastructure gets a little bit older. So under $2 billion, you know, you're going to be able to pick and choose on areas, pick and choose on your disciplines, and also pick and choose on how to build networks, and also loyalty to upstream contractors as well as downstream if you're a prime working with a supplier. Page 2 talks about what's out there, how to navigate it. Again, the slide 3 will show you. Also, if you have this, you could follow this. The related links. Again, talks about the workshops, some of the podcasts that are coming up, and also some of the other offerings that's offered by ODOT. There is a table of contents on every subject matter that's discussed by ODOT. And once again, it's pretty exhaustive, but you could find projects by project type, by the contractor. So everything is sorted out and filtered. You could look at it from the district and also by the item. Our slide 5 will tell you exactly if you were a niche contractor or supplier, how many of your projects were executed in 1 year. This shows basically 2019, the type of projects. This is just one page, and there's many, many more, but this actually identifies 1,503,863,655. So there's a lot of opportunities, and you could also see where you may want to engage yourself. Obviously, if you're a landscaper, that's one project versus the miscellaneous or the pavement markings, etc. A lot of these are repetitive. There is a life cycle, so there's probably more and more opportunities. Actually, the next 2 slides are so important, and I thought this was so educational for myself as the rest of my team. We talk about the summary of contracts awarded for the calendar 2019 by the contractor. Now, I would say is that you could identify who the contractors are to the left, so that's your competitors, or they may be you. But we talked about yesterday that sometimes the owners have weeks, months, or even years to develop the scope, to identify what they want to do, and sometimes when they want to do it. Now, I would tell you that the math, as I've said this many times, math doesn't lie. So they'll know the engineering of square footage, linear footage, cubic yard, miles, etc., like that. And the only thing that they don't know is really the labor and also material costs. Because if they postpone it or they stretch it out down the road and there's some cost increases, they being ODOT or the buyer can modify that cost. The formula doesn't change. It just spits out a different number. So you may have 2 weeks to respond to an invitation or an opportunity. And if you win, great. If you don't win, you're unsuccessful, you can learn why. And this shows a really quick summary of what estimated projection was from the owner and what is awarded for. And you'll see sometimes it's 20%, sometimes it's a little bit higher, 2%, minus 17%, etc. This is just one page. Now, you could go through all of the contractors, and there are many, many, many contractors in Ohio doing civil work for ODOT and bridge work and painting, etc., like that. So going through this is really important. But as you go to the next one about awarded projects, we identify this is just one page of 187 pages. Now you know why we can't go through all the ODOT. This is just one opportunity to learn about what ODOT is doing and the type of projects. So between the new construction, I want you to review this also to consider how do you work this against your estimate, your quantities and your pricing. So it's really so important. When I went through this, I said 187 pages. I went through half a dozen of these, and I was awed by the information and what I learned. So what I want to do is, Mike and Victoria, do you have any other questions from the audience? Because yesterday there were a lot of questions and we didn't get to answer a lot of them. I'm hoping we could do those this morning.
I don't have any additional questions from the audience. I did forward you those other ones, so if you want to go over those now.
Pull up those questions. Right. I'll let Luis manage that, and he's going to pull them up. I'll talk a little bit about the COVID-19 and how that's impacted our industry. Some projects in general are moving forward. Some projects have been delayed. Those projects that are delayed really gives you an opportunity to go back and to revisit how you're doing business and maybe alter, hopefully upgrade your protocols, your procedures, and build the relationships with your suppliers and subcontractors. Most subcontractors are in the same predicament that we all are, is because of the COVID-19. So again, try to build those relationships. So here, we'll go through some of the questions. Louis, just bring it over here.
There was also another question just came in from today. It says that that you had stated the bidding software that they can research to find ones we like. So apparently they're looking for that information on bidding software. Yep. And Luis, if you want to, your screen is definitely being shared with everybody. I didn't know if you knew that. So you can always hide it if you don't want to share the whole screen right now.
Share the questions.
It's the round circle on the GoToWebinar panel that's like on that little bump out that has the 2 screen icon. You should be able to click on that. There you go. That's great. So Joe, if you want to address that one question concerning the bidding software.
The software is available. I won't rate them because part of it is that don't know your specific requirements. Some are very costly. Some are so robust that you may not need them. So we'll send you that. We also, one of the questions was asked about, should you own your own equipment? What's the best way to get started? Sometimes you could share equipment. I'm not sure how ODOT recognizes that if you own it or not. That would be something that you want to clarify with ODOT. But shared equipment, if it sits idle and then you can rent it, that's a great value if you could do that. ODOT wants to know about change orders at the end of the project, and sometimes our work gets caught up in this final change order. Sometimes over 9 months to receive the final change order. How can I avoid this? You know, if there is a process that ODOT has, I can't tell you how to circumvent that. Change orders sometimes they do have to be reviewed because it is outside the scope. There's a lot more review process between quantities and costs and justification. It's a little bit different than when you do your preliminary or your base bid, obviously. So how do you manage that change order? We talked about it yesterday. Some people love change orders, some people avoid it. That's just the cost of doing business in construction. You can't avoid it. Hopefully you have enough working capital to get you through those difficult times on the change order side. You mentioned closeout. How is a bit part of that process, and what is the process? Closeout is actually making sure that you get your final retainage. It's not closed out until you get your final retainage, and then hold your files for future reference as far as we call after the fact, and use that as a baseline moving forward. And the reason I say that is because if you already know what your burn rate is, if you're putting down stone or concrete or whatever it may be, you have a burn rate. That is your actual cost. That is your burn rate for your firm. Now, you already know that if nothing ever changes, that's math. I said earlier, math doesn't lie. If you know it takes 3 guys or 7 guys, whatever it is, and you can get X amount of work, that should be your in-house burn rate. Obviously, the better talent and skill sets and equipment that you have, the better productivity you can have, and that gives you the competitive edge when it's A to B. We talked about being creative. The creative side of it is like, is there more equipment? Is there a better way of doing it? Can you do it? How do you do it better? You really got to think about this stuff. You just can't say, well, it's the same quantities, I'm going to do the same old way. Well, the same old way is going to do the same old response. What is the best way to get information from bid to the field? Information seems to get lost. I think we shared this yesterday. I think the biggest way to share that information is to have the estimator have a meeting with the project manager and maybe the superintendent, so that once the estimator hands that file over, that it's going to be complete with who the suppliers are, who the subcontractors are, the cost of goods, even the terms. Those terms have to be shared with the superintendent and also the project management team. If it's lost in transaction or in sharing that information, that's a breakdown in the company. I think you have to go back to communication and have everyone on the same page. We talked a little bit yesterday about the quick pay law. The quick pay law, you can look this up. It's usually a 10-day. By the time your upstream contractor gets paid, they have 10 days to pay you. If not, you're entitled to interest. Pat Espinoza, our legal seminar participant or moderator, will go into the 10-day quick pay law. The last page shows how to reach me for any other questions. We'll share those answers with many others. We'll post those answers because I think sometimes those specific questions can be used by others. They just don't come up to the very end. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to address estimating part 1 and part 2. Again, this is a general overview. Every industry is very specific. So I'd like to help those that may have any questions. And Victoria, I think that I'm wrapped up.
Okay, there's a couple of comments that have come into the question box while you were answering those additional questions from yesterday, and they seem to revolve around equipment and equipment sharing. One person said, be careful in sharing equipment with respect to DBE rules for CUF, commercially useful function. Very strict requirements for the DBE owning their own equipment. And I would also caution people, we have a commercially useful function training that we're going to be launching actually for the local public agencies in our e-learning system. And if you're registered or signed up for the LTAP listserv, then you'll get notice when that course comes out. I actually recorded the training with one of the individuals who monitors CUF last week early on, and I'm working on putting it into that e-learning format. I would also mention, you talked about the prompt payment rule, that on our LTAP YouTube site, we have recorded webinars where we had the prompt payment information covered in depth and in detail earlier this year. So if you're interested in learning more about prompt payment and how that's supposed to work and how the system that's all tracked in works, we do have those webinars available that you can view. So with that, we want to thank you very much for the presentations both yesterday and today. Great information. I'll be following up with an email, hopefully with a link to the recording, but at a minimum with information on the PowerPoint and on the handouts. And oh, someone wanted to know, what is LTAP? LTAP is the Local Technical Assistance Program. There's actually one LTAP center in every state in the nation, and it's federally and state funded to provide training and resources to the local public agencies, like your county engineers, city engineers, townships, villages. But we also provide training and technical assistance really to everyone who helps support the roadway transportation system. in the state. And I can send some additional information out when I email out the information today on the webinar in case you are interested in signing up for the listserv. And I'll also send you out a link to our e-learning catalog. We have available almost 300 different courses that if you're interested in learning more about different topics within the transportation civil engineering area, that we have training available, and it's all available at no cost. A good portion of the courses actually were developed through a partnership with other states through AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. And it's a resource that we here in Ohio have invested in since the beginning when we first started the development of those courses. So there's a ton of them out there and they run the gamut. So definitely take a look at that resource too. But thank you, Joe and Luis. We are looking forward to the next two courses that'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Make sure that if you haven't signed up for those yet, please do, because this is information that is definitely going to help you with your business and what you want to achieve on a daily basis. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.